printer can be cheaper than a dinner for two. But the moment it runs out of ink, the math starts to feel absurd. A tiny cartridge appears on a shelf, the price tag looks ridiculous, and suddenly the cheap printer does not feel cheap anymore. That is not an accident, it is the business model. The strange part is that most people do not buy a printer because they love printers. They buy one because a school form, a shipping label, a tax document, or a boarding pass suddenly has to exist on paper at the worst possible time. The printer is not the exciting purchase, it is the emergency purchase. And that emergency purchase is exactly where the trap begins. The printer on the shelf looks affordable because the real money may come later. The machine is the door, the ink is the toll. This is the same logic behind razors and blades, coffee pods, and some game consoles. Sell the hardware cheap, then earn from the things it needs to keep working. For decades, inkjet printers became a perfect home technology business. The device could be discounted aggressively. Retailers could advertise a low price. Families could bring the printer home without thinking too hard. But every future page depended on tiny containers of colored liquid controlled by the manufacturer. This is why the first cartridge replacement feels so painful. You thought you bought the product, then you discovered you bought access to a system. Black, cyan, magenta, and yellow become small subscriptions to a machine you already own. But to understand the price, we have to be fair. Printer ink is not just water with color. It has to survive inside a cartridge for months, flow through microscopic nozzles, dry quickly on paper, resist smearing, reproduce colors, and avoid clogging the printhead. A bad formula can ruin the print, the printer, or both. The chemistry matters, because an inkjet printer is basically a tiny machine gun for liquid. It fires thousands of droplets in precise patterns at high speed on cheap paper, glossy photo paper, envelopes, labels, and sometimes paper that has been sitting in a drawer for years. The ink has to behave in all of those situations. The cartridge is also more than a container. Some cartridges include printheads, many include chips. The chip can report ink levels, identify the cartridge, help with quality control, and communicate with the printer. Manufacturers say this protects reliability, security, and the customer experience. This is why two cartridges that look similar can behave very differently. One may be a simple tank of ink. Another may include the printhead itself, which means every replacement also replaces part of the printing mechanism. But this is where the story turns into a fight, because the same chip that helps the printer recognize a cartridge can also make third-party cartridges harder to use. When consumers try cheaper alternatives, they may see warnings, compatibility errors, firmware issues, or messages that push them back toward original cartridges. AP calls attention to cartridge chip security on its own website. It says, chips in original AP Office cartridges use tamper-resistant proprietary firmware and can help reduce risks from modified chips. That is the company's argument. But the consumer reaction is different. If a cheaper cartridge works, why should software be able to block it? This is why the debate never really ends. Both sides can point to something real. Manufacturers worry about bad ink, leaks, printhead damage, counterfeit products, and support costs. Customers worry about being forced into a more expensive supply chain after they already paid for the machine. This tension has followed the printer industry for years. Firmware updates, dynamic security, cartridge recognition, and class action lawsuits have all kept the debate alive. The companies argue quality, reliability, and intellectual property. Critics argue lock-in, waste, and artificially limited choice. There is another detail that makes ink feel even more expensive. We use less of it than we think. Many households print rarely. Ink can dry out. Nozzles can clog. Printers may run cleaning cycles that consume ink. So even people who barely print can still end up replacing cartridges. The shelf price also hides the real comparison. A cheap cartridge may print fewer pages. A larger cartridge may cost more upfront but less per page. Photo printing can use color ink quickly. Draft text may use far less. So the number that matters is not just the price of the cartridge, it is the cost per page, and most buyers do not calculate it in the aisle. That is the hidden cost of occasional printing. If you print every day, the machine stays active. If you print once a month, the printer still has to keep itself ready. The ink is not only used on the page, some of it is used to maintain the system. Then came subscriptions. AP Instant Ink is the clearest example. Instead of buying cartridges only when they run out, customers can pay for a monthly page plan. AP says the printer monitors ink levels and ships replacements before the user runs out. The price is based on pages, not the amount of ink. This changes the psychology completely. A full-color photo and a black and white page can count the same under some plans. That can be great for people who print lots of color, but it also means printing becomes a service. The cartridge is no longer just a product. It is part of an account. For manufacturers, subscriptions solve several problems. They make revenue more predictable. They keep customers connected to original supplies. They reduce the shock of buying cartridges at a store, and they turn a messy replacement moment into a recurring relationship. But subscriptions also create new questions. What happens if you stop paying? What happens to unused pages? What happens if the printer needs an internet connection? What happens when the device you bought depends on a service account to feel normal? The printer becomes less like a toaster and more like a platform. This is why refillable tank printers became such a powerful alternative. Epson's EcoTank line and similar tank printers from other brands flip the model. You pay more upfront for the printer, but it comes with large ink tanks and lower-cost bottles. The pain moves from the cartridge shelf to the initial purchase. Tank printers are not magic. They cost more at the beginning. They can still clog if neglected. They may not be the best choice for every household, but they reveal the truth of the old model. If ink can be sold in bottles at a lower long-term cost, then the cartridge model was never just about the liquid. That is why the best printer for one person can be the worst printer for another. A student printing essays once in a while might want something simple. A family printing worksheets and photos every week may save money with tanks. A small office may be better with a laser printer. The expensive mistake is buying only for the sticker price. The cartridge is a business package. It is ink, plastic, chip, distribution, retail margin, warranty risk, research, brand control, and customer lock-in, all compressed into one small object. That is why it can feel wildly overpriced when you only look at the liquid inside. And the industry faces a strange problem. People print less than they used to. Documents moved to phones. Tickets became QR codes. Bank statements went digital. But when people do print, they still expect the printer to work instantly. Lower volume makes every cartridge sale more important. So printer companies are caught between two worlds. The old world sold machines and cartridges. The new world sells services, subscriptions, tanks, and managed print systems. Consumers want low prices and freedom. Manufacturers want quality control and recurring revenue. The conflict is built into the machine. The smartest way to think about printer ink is not as a mystery liquid. It is a price signal. It tells you where the profit is. If the printer is cheap, ask what it needs every month. If the cartridge is expensive, ask whether a tank printer or laser printer would cost less over time. The cheapest box is not always the cheapest system. That is the real answer. Printer ink is expensive because it sits at the center of a business model that was designed to keep earning after the printer's sale. Some of the price pays for real technology. Some pays for reliability, some pays for distribution and support, but some pays for control. So the next time a printer seems impossibly cheap, remember what the shelf is really selling. The printer is only the beginning. The cartridge is the relationship. And the most expensive part of printing is often not the machine on your desk. It is the business model hidden inside it.